think all of us can in some way sympathize with the woman in today's gospel because we've probably all struggled with a bad back from time to time. You slept wrong, you try to stretch it out, you just can't fully get there. You have to give it some time. I can't imagine struggling with that for 18 years, being bent over and not being able to finally stand up and stretch. That's how sin works too. Slowly, it bends us down, a little fear here, a little resentment there. And before long, the soul leans forward under a weight that it was never meant to carry. The woman in today's gospel wasn't just physically bent over, but she was also spiritually bound. Her soul was constricted. She couldn't stretch it because of the weight of her ailment. 18 years of staring at the ground. 18 years of seeing only dirt and feet. That's a long time to live looking down, unable to even lift your eyes toward heaven. And yet, even though she's bent over in the crowd, Jesus shouldn't be able to see her amongst all the heads. He does. He feels that she is near, and so he calls out to her, and then he lays his hands on her. Woman, you are set free. Notice he doesn't say, woman, you are healed. He says, you are set free. Immediately she stands up straight and glorifies God. Meanwhile, the synagogue leaders, they call it a violation of the Sabbath. But Jesus calls it exactly what the Sabbath is for: the restoration of God's children to freedom and dignity. Now, St. Paul gives us the lens to understand what just happened. He tells us, you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but a spirit of adoption, through which we cry, Abba, Father. For you see, fear bends us down, whereas grace raises us up, it stretches us. The Spirit within us doesn't make us servants afraid to get it wrong. It makes us sons and daughters who trust the Father's love. You see, the Pharisees were weighed down by making a mistake on the Sabbath. They didn't want to make a mistake on the Sabbath. And because they were so concerned with not breaking the law, they weren't following it either. At least not the true meaning of the law. The law meant to make us free, to relax, to be able to remind ourselves of how much we must rely on the Father's love. And that's why Jesus' healing on the Sabbath is such an important thing for us. In this case, he's not just fixing someone's body, he's showing us what it means to rest in the Father's mercy. He healed her so that she could enjoy the Sabbath rest. She could finally relax. Jesus says, just like you untie the ox from its burdens, why would you not untie the burdens from the sons and daughters of God? Now, most of us don't need 18 years of a bad back to be able to be thankful for God's mercy. But we do have to remember that we allow ourselves to be bent over slowly in small ways every day. When we live a guarded and self-reliant existence, when we nurse quiet angers or dwell on old shames, that's when our hearts begin to hunch over on themselves. Even our prayer can then become servile, like the Pharisees, concerned with doing the right thing instead of living the right way, as if we try to earn a father's affection instead of just receiving it. We know the language of fear all too well. But what if I fail? What if God's disappointed in me? The Spirit has to retrain us how to speak the language of sons and daughters who cry out, Abba, Father. Every Mass is Jesus saying to us, you are set free. He lays his hands upon us through the word and the sacrament. He lifts our eyes to the altar, which is why, by the way, it's on a raised platform. So we lift up our eyes. The same Spirit that raised the bent woman now raises our spirits to stand tall in the Father's presence and in the presence of his Son. The Eucharist is the true Sabbath rest, not a rule, but a relationship restored. Here the bent stand straight, the fearful call God Father, and those bound by sin learn how to rest again in God's mercy. And as children, we become not childish, but heirs, co-heirs with Christ, heirs of the Father's love, who now must do for others what God has done for us. So, if you know someone who's bent over, rather physically by an illness or spiritually by isolation, visit them today. Pray the Our Father with them. Remind them of who they are, sons and daughters of a merciful God. Allow the compassion that heals you time and time again to flow through you to them. The Sabbath is fulfilled when love moves outward. Yesterday should spill out into the remainder of our week. When Jesus said, "Woman, you are set free," she stood tall for the first time in 18 years. That's what grace can accomplish. Namely, it restores the posture of a child before the Father, not huddled down in fear, but hopeful in expectation. Maybe that's our prayer today. Lord, give us the grace to stand up straight in your presence again, not afraid, but in love. Let that same Spirit raise whatever fear has bent over in our souls. Help us to hear deep in our souls the same voice of Christ. You are a slave no longer. You are a child of God. Therefore rise, stand free and straight in the presence of the Spirit.